So here's something that you've never heard me say before. We're going to take a look at the AROIDS today. Now, up until about 4 months ago, I'd never even heard of AROIDS. They're completely new to me, so I'm a newbie AROID grower. And I thought what we'd do today is have a little look around the 12 to 15 plants that I've accumulated over the past few months. It was quite a shock to me that I'd accumulated so many. I'll talk about the prices and where I got them from, where I sourced them from, and have a look at how they've grown for me over the last few months. So we'll talk about some of the care that I've been giving them and how they've been doing pretty well so far in terms of growth, the new roots development and the culture and so on. That doesn't mean to say that they'll continue to grow like that for me, but I am learning as I go along, as I know lots of you are too. So let's have a look at my AROIDS. And we are in. Okay, so, oh, I've just spotted a fungus gnat. Nice to see that they've not completely gone from my life. So we're going to do nothing too heavy today. I'm just going to do an off-the-cuff thing, have a little look at these AROIDS, not get too heavy into the care because frankly I don't know a great deal about them other than what I'm going to tell you today, and no doubt I will enjoy learning about it as I go along. So this one is Anthurium warocqueanum. So I've learned quite a few things about Anthurium pretty recently. One is that they're not climbers. Another is that you can tell the difference between an Anthurium and a Philodendron by certain things to do with the veins on the leaves, which we'll talk about a little later. I'm not going to go into that just yet, but that will be coming up, no doubt, as soon as I get one that we can actually see the veins on. So that would really help, wouldn't it, if I can show you what I'm describing. So the Queen Anthurium. So what is particularly special about this one is that it costs rather a lot of money. Well, it cost me £60, which for me is a lot of money to spend on a plant, especially one that was absolutely tiny. And it has grown, and I did put it in sphagnum moss to start with, but now as you can see I have it in my particular own special AROID mix, which again we're going to talk about as we move through the video. So this one is growing particularly well. It was really small. This one what was known as a rooted chonk, or just like a little section of a stem that had a tiny little root on it, and I'm glad to say I have my first almost Queen Anthurium leaf. So the leaf that you're looking at there, you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to be in terms of the veining on it and the shape of it. But bear in mind that these leaves can go 3 to 4 feet in length. I have heard of them being 6 feet in length in perfect conditions. So you know I am going to have a problem if it gets to that sort of proportions, which of course I want it to. You know, that's the whole point of getting these things. But the AROIDS definitely will not fit in this grow room as time goes on, but I'll enjoy watching that process happen. So that is my Queen Anthurium. At the moment it's not even looking princely, but it's certainly giving me an idea that it will start to grow pretty big at some point. And right next to it is a fairly new purchase. So this is a Colocasia, and I did actually get some bulbs for Colocasia. I got 2 bulbs from a place called Farmer Grace's, and unfortunately they both completely rotted off despite my best care and attention. I have to say, when they arrived I was a little dubious that anything good would come from them because they were fairly squishy. I really like this one. This is Colocasia Mojito, and a lot of these AROIDS I've noticed that the younger leaves don't appear, to me anyway, to be anywhere near as nice as the older leaves, but I still quite like this one. So this one, because of the disaster with the bulbs, I thought I'd try and get hold of an actual plant. These do like really warm temperatures. The advice on this, certainly from Farmer Grace's, was they don't really want to go below 22 degrees Celsius. Now they do here, they go down to 17. I've had this a couple of weeks now, and it's got a new leaf out there, and there's another new leaf coming there, so that seems to be quite happy. I don't actually think I've watered it yet, and it still seems to be fairly moist. So that's Colocasia Mojito. I believe these can go really big, as can a lot of the AROIDS. And this very small plant of Colocasia Mojito actually cost me £25 off Etsy. So let's move on downwards. So that's probably the biggest leaf I have at the moment. on my various AROIDs. None of these AROIDs were in this hothouse up to beyond 4 months ago. All of them have been purchased in the last 4 months, or swapped or gifted to me. I'll just have to put this one down so I can show it you. So this is Anthurium crystallinum, not crystallinum. It looks like an inum. The writing's faded a little bit on that. So that is a fairly new leaf, and you can get an idea of how these things really start to grow very, very large. They have put on quite a lot of growth since they've all been sprayed for spider mite. It seems I did have a rather large spider mite problem. Talking about the difference between Anthuriums and Philodendrons, it's all to do with the veining. I mean, I believe there are more differences, but the veining is what gives it away. So the Anthurium, and I suppose the challenge is remembering which is which, but the Anthurium you can see has like a webbing of veins. I think the word is reticulate, if I've got that right. I'll have to put that up on the screen if I haven't got it wrong. Reticulate veins. And they also have like a, almost like a, I think it's a collective vein it's called, that goes along the edge, or a little bit from the edge of the leaf, whereas when you look at philodendrons, they don't have that collective vein. It goes, the veinings are parallel and they go right to the end of the leaf, which we'll have a look at when we get round to the philodendrons. So that's Anthurium crystallinum, and I'll just tag this in there. This one cost me £38. Again, a little rooted chunk, a tiny little rooted cutting, and again it's grown really well, especially since we got rid of the spider mites. But I'm going to have to keep spraying these things, aren't I? As no doubt I will have to do in the greenhouse. But I'm on top of that now, and believe me, making the last video wasn't just so that I could have an affiliate link. I will make pence off that if anybody actually uses the link. I just added that in at the end, why wouldn't I? So let's have a look at some of my other AROIDs. So moving on, so you love how plants have stories. All the plants have stories. Sometimes I get the stories muddled up. And this one is Philodendron verrucosum. So what's the difference, we said? The veining, if you look at the veining here, you can't actually see that webbing of veins quite close up, and you'll notice that they are parallel almost, and they go right to the edge of the leaf. You don't have that collective vein that goes right along the edge, about a centimetre from the edge. Of course, that depends on the size of the leaf. But this one, again, very slow to get going, but only purely because it had spider mites on it. But you can see it is growing fairly well now. And no doubt because it's a philodendron, it will want to cling to something, and that was another difference between them both. The Anthuriums are self-supporting, whereas the philodendrons are all vines, I believe. I might be wrong, you know, don't forget I'm just picking this up as I'm going along, so I might have to do a little bit of correction as time goes on. So this verrucosum, I can see there's a few aerial roots coming there, so that is definitely going to be one that clings. So this Philodendron verrucosum was actually a gift. I did a swap with a lady called Fiona to try and get hold of a Monstera, which I'll show you in a little while, and she chucked this one in as just a little surprise free gift. And at that particular point, I not really got into AROIDs. The only AROID that I wanted at that particular time was the Monstera albo-variegata, but I can see this one is going to shape up to be a really, really nice plant, and it's growing very, very strongly, and I'm going to have to get some support for it soon. I no doubt will have to move some of these into the house as they start to get too big for this grow room, which will be a shame, but it could be nice, I suppose, in the house. Whatever it is the hothouse is lost, the house will gain from that. So that's Philodendron verrucosum. And I do recall somebody else telling me that they are a spider mite magnet. So get your little botanist's hand lens out on that, just to make sure that you're not stunting its growth with those horrible little things. So moving down past the very large begonia there, that one is size Morier, but we're not talking about begonias, we're talking about this one here. So this one is albo-variegata, Syngonium in fact, albo-variegata, and you can see I've actually got it on a little bit of stick. And we'll talk about the mix that I've got them all in at the moment. Now they're all in slightly different mix because I'm not measuring them out, you know, with precision. Basically it's something that's got to be fairly porous, fairly open. So I've put them in roughly, you know, don't quote me on these percentages, but roughly about 50% general purpose compost, maybe I don't know, 25% perlite, 25% bark. On occasion, I might have substituted some of the bark with a little bit of lacquer or some kind of gravelly stuff. Anything really to keep it open and keep it loose. I've seen various mixes, and so far I have to say all of them seem to be working fine. In fact, the one next door that you can see here is just in purely multi-purpose compost, and it's doing perfectly well. At the moment anyway. That doesn't mean it will always do well, as we know. So at the moment, this Syngonium albo-variegata, which cost me £52, I got this one again from Plant Shop from Etsy. I really liked it. I know at one point it was considered rare and now it's not, but that doesn't really matter to me. I also believe that these things will cling to just about anything. I think another name is it arrowhead? I mean, it does look like an arrowhead, doesn't it? But it's just a lovely thing. I just really like these beautiful, like almost paint splashed leaves. And you can see it's just about climbing up this little bit of silver birch here that I had hanging around. So I'm going to attempt to grow it up there and see how that does. So that was one of the larger plants that came. And next door to it we have Philodendron Florida Ghost. So this one is fairly recently potted up. So this one was from Smar. Now her channel deals with semi-hydroponics and she has a lot more arrows than I do, I believe. Now that leaf that you can see is the leaf that it came with. Half of it died off. I had it in sphagnum moss, as I've had a lot of these, especially the cuttings in sphagnum moss, for many months. And this took an absolute eternity. In fact, it's taken a full 4 months to actually form any roots, but it's happened. And as you can see now, we have a new leaf beginning to develop there. I'm not really sure about Philodendron Florida Ghost at the moment. I'm not certain that it's the kind of plant that I want. I've seen some larger specimens. I mean, they look okay. Maybe, you know, when I see it in person, when it actually begins to grow for me, it might be something that I like a little bit more. And next door to it, one of the Monsteras that I actually began my collection with. So this was Monstera albo-variegata. Again, this was from Smart, and we have 3 brand new leaves on that. This is just in multi-purpose compost because that's all I knew at the time. I just simply stuck it in multi-purpose compost with perlite, and so far so good. That was the original leaf that it came with. I believe eventually it will begin to get those holes, those fenestrations in there. I believe that's what that's called. Again, moving on, next door to that, this one is, I'll have to read it out to you, Philodendron composporteanum. Again, a simple little cutting, and we have all this growth which has come over the last 4 months. And this is one of the only, in fact I think it's the only one that I actually have on a moss pole. It's a coir pole, and you can just about see there, can you see those roots there which have already clung and wrapped themselves around the coir pole. And that one's a little bit loose. The one on the other side is much more fixed. So nice looking thing, beautiful leaves. I expect they will end up that kind of shape looking at them, but these larger ones which are younger, a different shape altogether. You very often seem to find this with AROID plants, in that the younger leaves look completely different in shape to the older leaves. There's one there, just, I don't know whether, you can kind of get the idea of the shape of that one. Not sure where that hole's come from. Something's had a go at that, hasn't it? But you can see you're getting more of a shape there as the leaves get a little bit more mature. So that is another philodendron. Let's move on. So as we look up here at another one from Fiona, this was Monstera albo-variegata with a brand new leaf in the middle, and that brand new leaf only came once I'd sprayed it for spider mite. I've only fairly recently potted it up, and again I've used the same kind of AROID mix, probably slightly different proportions, but I don't really measure these things out. I just put it in there and see what happens, and I adjust as time goes on. So in terms of like a general AROID care, it seems that whatever I have here in the hothouse, it's pretty much what they like. It's not something that I really spent a lot of time looking up. I know they're used as houseplants, so it pretty much made sense that they would grow fairly well in these conditions. You know, my minimum temperatures are 17 degrees Celsius. It tends not to go over about 32. The sun only comes round here and goes onto the windows and through the windows for roughly a couple of hours a day if we get sun, so it's not that regular. And of course I've got the very cheap grow light. So in terms of general conditions, light, well, I believe that more light the better, not direct sun, but they can tolerate lower light. It's a bit like the begonias, isn't it, in terms of light? People think of them as low light plants, but well, they really prefer to be much brighter than you expect. Just not that direct sun. The direct sun they will not like, especially through glass, as pretty much no houseplant does. But as aroids are a family of plants, you're going to get quite a range of temperatures. Some I believe can go down to 7 degrees Celsius and some can go up to around 35 degrees Celsius in terms of range. But we're talking about a huge family of plants which has various genera which all have their own origins, so that you will have kind of lowland plants, you'll have ultra lowland plants, you'll have highland plants, you'll have ultra highland plants. So in terms of the actual temperature range, you're going to have to look it up. But so far, everything that I've had in here seems to be doing okay. I know that can change, but we're doing all right so far after 4 months. Time will tell how they do over the full range of the year and the light levels that we get here in the UK. So the humidity is meant to be high. I do believe, and I've read, that that is not exactly an absolute requirement, but it is something that they would really prefer. Of course, they're going to get high humidity here in the UK anyway, especially in this hot house that I have here. Nice to see this new leaf does have these holes in it straight off. So obviously they don't develop them as they grow from a young non-holy leaf. It's the more mature leaves, once they grow, they already have them in. Now why they have them, nobody seems to know this. I did read a really good little post from James Wong on this, why plants have them. There are various theories. One is that maybe it protects the leaf in the strong winds because the air can actually pass through them. There is another theory which I can't remember, but there's various theories and nobody really knows for sure. Next to this beautiful aroid here we have another philodendron. Again, remember the parallel veins there. So this is Philodendron melanochrysum. Again, done much better since I've sprayed it. Again, it's going to be a climber, and I really like the new young leaves on this. I like the slightly different shade and the very velvety texture to that one. That's going to be a nice one. And all of them started off in sphagnum moss, but now they're all in proper, you would call it an aroid mix, I guess. So still moving on with the conditions. In terms of watering, I tend to water mine when they're dry. I leave them until I can see at least the top few centimeters is dry. This is why I've put some of these in orchid pots so I can actually see what's going on, because they were completely new to me. So I was a little bit worried that I might rot those roots by, you know, the usual overwatering thing. Fertilizer only well in full growth. For me, they're probably going to be in full growth for most of the year. It's just going to be those really dark months when they might slow down, in which case I would stop with the fertilizer. pH, well, pretty similar to orchids. Something like 5.5 to 6 pH is what they like, I believe. And by the way, this Philodendron melanochrysum was actually £45 from Etsy, just for a tiny little rooted cutting. But as you can see, they come pretty quickly anyway, and I think they seem to be fairly robust in terms of propagation success rate. Down here we've got a fairly sickly looking Alocasia. This was a free gift from somebody. I can't remember which one it was. Was it Amazonica? Something like that. You can see how the leaves have gone, and that's what spider mite does. So I'm hoping, because it's only been sprayed for a week or two, I'm hoping that that will start to put some new growth out soon, now that we have eradicated those spider mites. So almost hidden here because of the colour, we have Philodendron Pink Princess. Had that since February and we're now in July. It should hopefully have some variegations on it soon. You can see a little hint of it, maybe just 1 or 2 little marks on it. So again, this is another one that had mites, and no doubt it had the little flies buzzing around it as well, the fungus gnats. So I'm hoping that starts to do better soon. You can see some variegation on that little tiny leaf there. So yeah, Philodendron Pink Princess. I'm still talking about philodendrons. I also believe that these are I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, hemiepyphytic. Whether I've pronounced that properly or not, I'll put the name up on screen. And what that means is that basically they vine upwards, and those aerial roots start to drop towards the ground. So they do actually have the roots in the ground to start with. So they're not totally epiphytic. They don't like root in the tree. So they will root in the ground, and as they climb up some kind of plant, some kind of support, they will drop those aerial roots, and they will also start to root in the ground. So we're nearly done. Over here in the corner we have another Syngonium. This was another free gift from someone. When I say free gift, we did a swap. So this is Syngonium panda. Oh, I've actually had this one since August 2021. And what I'm a little bit worried about here is it keeps sticking with these roots to the side of the hothouse. So again, this was Syngonium panda, but this one, it's again really nice larger leaves, like more mature leaves. The younger plant I'm not that thrilled with at the moment, but I'm hoping that it will start to show me those more mature leaves. I'll try and put a picture on screen of what the more mature leaves look like. I'm going to have to do something about that in terms of it climbing up something. So can you tell me about moss poles? Anybody who's been growing these things for a while? I've been using the coir ones. I can see that it doesn't look that difficult to actually make your own, and will that be better? I mean, the coir, it's pretty tough stuff, and I don't think they're going to be able to kind of penetrate that. Whether they'll just cling to the outer edges of it, does it really matter? You know, are they that tenacious? Are they that easy to grow that they don't really care what they climb up? You know, somebody did say that about Syngoniums to me. I think it was Michael. So, you know, let me know what you do with moss poles. Do you do your own? Do you just buy them cheaply? What do you do, and what are the advantages of each? I would like to know that in the comments, please. Okay, so do you have any tips on these plants? Is there anything that you want to know from me about my care so far after my 4 measly months that I've been growing these things? They certainly do fit in with what I like in a plant. I do like a good leaf, you know, let's face it. Everybody loves blooms, but blooms don't last, do they? And it's really nice if you can get a really nice attractive leaf like in the begonias. This is why I grow begonias as well. And I really like the kind of jungly feel that you get from these AROIDS, and if they have a nice bloom as well, then all the better. You've got 2 for the price of 1, haven't you? And if you would like a specific video on a specific thing that you might have seen in passing as we've gone around the hothouse, then please get over to my Patreon page, join up there, support me on there, and you can request a specific video, and I promise I will make it for you. And the thing is, it's all very well growing these so-called low light loving plants like the begonias, like some of the AROIDS, but if you get this one thing wrong, then it's a complete waste of time, and you might well lose lots of money in dead plants. So I suggest you go and watch this video here. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, write something in the comments, and for now, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.